Well, this is the unknown mechanic back again, and this is going to be Carburetors 101, episode 2. And today we are working on a 4-stroke. This is a V-twin Vanguard 16 horsepower Briggs and Stratton. And I'm going to show you what I've done so far. I have drained the fuel, and it's kind of hard to see, but there is about half of this fuel is water. And so I have drained the tank and blown the lines out and replaced the fuel filter, and I have checked the function of the fuel pump. It is pumping fuel. And so now I've got clean fuel in the tank and a clean fuel filter and clean fuel coming out of the fuel pump. And I'm going to try to start it, and we'll see what happens. Got the choke on, ignition on. And it will not start. It should start much easier than that. So we're going to prime it. I've tested the compression, and the compression's fine. The engine's got very low hours on it. Check the spark. It has spark, and the plugs are good. Okay, the engine only runs when I feed it fuel, so it definitely needs a carburetor overhaul. So I am going to shut the camera off and remove the carburetor, and we're going to go into the shop. Okay, in the shop, continuing with Carburetors 101, episode 2. And I've removed the Vanguard downdraft Briggs and Stratton carburetor. It was difficult. I had to use a crowfoot wrench to access one of the bolts to get this off. The bolts come in from underneath, and there's not a lot of room. So that is a time where you may need to use a crowfoot wrench. And one of the rules that I have in carburetor overhauls is that before you open a carburetor, you clean the exterior dirt off so that when you do open it, you don't contaminate the inside. The inside's supposed to be clean. So I'm going to do some exterior cleaning. I don't want to make the video longer than necessary, so I'm going to edit that part out. I'll come back when it's clean. Okay, I've cleaned the exterior of the carburetor. The insulator block came off, and it is not symmetrical. There is some kind of an air blockage piece here, and luckily there is a locator pin. So it obviously won't go that way. It has to go down, and it will only go one way, so I'm not too worried about that. So we're going to take the top off the carburetor and take a look. There's a lot of water in the fuel, then there could be a lot of water and water damage inside. This carburetor is a Niki, and it is made in Japan. Sometimes Briggs and Stratton uses Walbro, sometimes they use their own, sometimes they use this Japanese carburetor. Okay, now it looks terrible. We'll bring the camera in for a close-up here. This carburetor is filthy. There's been water sitting in it for some time. It's going to have to go in the sonic cleaner, and I have got the correct carburetor kit for it. I'm going to pause the camera and we're going to do some sonic cleaning, see how clean we can get it. Okay, had to do a lot of extensive cleaning here, and in order to get the float bowl clean, it was so badly corroded in there from water sitting in it, I had to mask off all of the passageways and take it to the bead blaster and actually bead blast the bowl to get it clean. So it's pretty clean now, and that was a tough job. Upper body was easier than the lower body. So the water was sitting in the lower body for I don't know how long. In reading the instructions here, they do want the choke shaft seal and the throttle shaft seal replaced. And one thing I noticed is they're describing this collar on the throttle shaft, and this engine did not have it. So I'm not sure if I'm going to put that in or not. The other thing is that the low-speed needle, the idle mixture needle, is not adjustable. It's got a limiter cap on it, and it won't move at all. And it's different than the idle adjustment needle that's in the repair kit. And they did provide a Welsh plug for the idle circuit. And I think what I'm going to do is, this stuff is accessible when this is mounted on the engine. I'm going to leave this alone, and if it doesn't want to idle properly, I can break this limiter cap and unscrew this adjustment needle. And I can also remove this Welsh plug and use what's provided in the kit. And this limiter cap, once it's installed, there is a range of lean, rich adjustment. Now the gaskets, they did not survive the cleaning process well at all. So I had to halt the job for to order some parts, and I did get the air cleaner mounting gasket and the carburetor mounting gasket. So I'm going to be removing the remnants that remains off the lower carburetor body and the upper carburetor body. And another thing that I like to do is I have a tarnish remover, and that's useful when you have some brass parts and you want them to come out as clean as new. And you can actually have a Q-tip here, and I can get some tarnish remover on the brass seat that's pressed into the lower body. Tarnish remover is only supposed to remain on there for about 2 minutes, and it's already done its job. Those are as clean as new. So the other thing I'm going to do is the float did not clean up very well. You can see that there's a lot of corrosion still left on the float. And I'm going to use 00 steel wool, and I'm going to do this over the garbage can and try to, remove this corrosion. And then I'm going to clean this again in the sonic cleaner. I don't want any small particles of steel wool to get inside the carburetor. So I'm going to shut the camera off for now, and I'm going to do some choke shaft, throttle shaft seal replacement, and I'm going to do some float cleaning and gasket removal, and then we're going to come back for reassembly. Okay, I'm back again after some gasket removal. Got the remnants of the gaskets off the top and the bottom of the carburetor. And I have successfully replaced the choke shaft seal. However, when I went to replace the throttle shaft seal, I discovered that there was no seal in this carburetor, and the seal that's provided in the repair kit does not fit the throttle bore in the carburetor body. And so there's only about half an inch of throttle bushing in this. And so what I've decided to do is the old choke shaft bushing fits into the body perfectly, and there is a foam seal that was supplied in the repair kit. So I'm going to be repurposing that old choke bushing in here, and it seems to work very well to seal up the throttle shaft. Now I have backed off the idle stop screw exactly 3 turns, and I carefully marked the throttle butterfly, so it's going to go back in exactly the same way. And I'm going to use Loctite on the screw. And by turning the throttle shaft, the butterfly will self-center itself in the throttle bore. Okay, I'm satisfied. Okay, it's hard to see, but the jet, I had a hard time getting the jet back in there. But it's back in, and that's going to be plugged off with, instead of, some engines have a solenoid that shuts the gas off. This one's just got a plug, and there's a new copper seal that fits on that plug. And that goes back in there. And then the float, there are two needles supplied in the kit. The brass needle is for engines with a fuel pump, and this lightweight aluminum needle is for engines that are gravity feed where the tank is above the carburetor. So to put the float back in there, as you can see, I was able to get the float pretty clean with the steel wool, so that's acceptable. And drop this down in here. And the interesting thing, the float level, it describes in the instructions in the carburetor repair kit. These instructions did not cover float level at all, and I had to refer to the service manual. And what the service manual says is that when this carburetor body is inverted just past vertical, the float, actually it's this way, the float level on a fuel pump carburetor is supposed to be 1/16 of an inch below the gasket surface of the carburetor body. And if this were a gravity feed carburetor, the float would actually be above, and that's why there are cutouts. There's actually cutouts in the gasket so the float can extend above the level of the carburetor body. But this is a fuel pump equipped engine, so the float doesn't have to go that high. So this is low. I am going to be bending the float arm here and raising the float level a little bit. Then as far as the rest of it goes, like this emulsion tube, some people call it a pilot jet, but the hole in the end of this pilot jet is the smallest hole in the entire carburetor. And I've had a lot of crappy mechanics that worked for me in the past, and one of them was Scratch. And Scratch was supposedly had 40 years experience, and he knew better than everyone. And we were working on a very similar engine to this. It's a V-twin Vanguard with a downdraft Nike carburetor, and it came in, and the customer's complaint was the engine was surging when it was at low speed, idling. And these engines have a governed idle because the hydraulic pump, when the hydraulic fluid is cold, the engine's got to work a little bit harder until the hydro fluid heats up and gets thinner. And so they have a governed idle. There's an extra little governor spring, and this throttle stop is not touching the stop screw when the engine's idling. It's actually a little bit above, and the governor is controlling the idle, compensating for parasitic loads on a big piece of equipment. And in this case, it was a hydraulic pump in cold hydraulic fluid. So he was convinced that the tiller, hydraulic tiller, came from a surplus rental yard sale, and that it was sold off because the valves were worn out, the cylinder and the rings were worn out, and the engine had 300,000 miles on it, and the engine was tired, and there was no possible way that doing anything to the carburetor would correct for a surging condition. And he was kind of a half-empty glass mechanic rather than a half-full glass mechanic. And a lot of the stuff, he just he fixed a very low percentage of machines. He just would condemn them prematurely without thoroughly doing any diagnostics. And so I ended up working on that one, and what I found was the emulsion tube, that hole was plugged or partially plugged, and the idle was very, very lean, and the engine was surging. And so on that one, I was able to leave the carburetor mounted on the engine and remove the top off of the carburetor and leave that mounted. I didn't have to take that off. And then the emulsion tube, I was able to remove it and thoroughly clean it and put it back, and then the engine no longer surged. And so that's a tip. You can do a quick and dirty carburetor overhaul on an engine that surges at idle by doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the camera off because you don't need to see too much nuts and bolts. I've already explained, the technical part of it, float level adjustment, brass needle, emulsion tube cleaning, throttle shaft seal replacement. We're going to reassemble the carburetor, and then I'm going to put it back on the engine, and we're going to resume there. Okay, two more things before I put the top back on the carburetor. Thought I would mention. Now is the perfect opportunity to pressure test. You always want to pressure test at the earliest opportunity. So if you find a problem, there isn't a lot of disassembly and wasted time. So you want to test these with the needle wet. And this one, you got to just put your index finger there and hold the float hinge pin down. And then you can put, about half a bar, and see, it releases, holds, and then it releases. So I'm satisfied with the needle and seat on this. We've got a brand new needle, and the other thing I had to play around with quite a bit was the float adjustment. And I mentioned that the service manual says that gravity feed systems, the float is actually supposed to be higher than the carburetor body. And in a fuel pump system like ours, the one I'm working on here now, it's supposed to be a 1/16 of an inch below the surface of the carburetor when the carburetor is tilted just past vertical. And so, I've done that, and I played with the adjustment, and I'm happy with it. So now I'm going to put the top back on the carburetor, and then I'm going to put the carburetor back on the engine, and we'll resume there. All right, we're going to do a test run here. It may take several minutes for the fuel pump to fill the carburetor before it'll start. So I'm going to wear my arm out. Okay, the unknown mechanic back. I have decided to swap out the fuel pump. Got a new fuel pump in there because I didn't trust this one. I saw a lot of fuel coming out the back and the muffler's down there, so that's a fire hazard. So the lines are dry. May take a few pulls to get the pump full and then the carburetor full. We'll see if it takes off and goes, and if it does, call it a day. That was easier than I thought. There was still some fuel in the carburetor bowl. So this job is done. If you like the video, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you watch all my other videos and leave some comments. If there's a particular carburetor that you want to see me do, leave that in the comments or suggestions, and we'll see you on the next one.